The Forbidden Warning. The Krillian Dominion stretched across 47 star systems, a monument to military precision and unstoppable conquest. For 300 cycles, their silver warships had carved through the galaxy, bringing world after world under their control. The Krillians were not cruel by nature, but they were absolute. Surrender meant survival. Resistance meant extinction. Every species in the known sectors understood this simple truth. At the heart of the Dominion's power stood the Grand Fleet, commanded by admirals who had never known defeat. Among them was Vorn Kalar, youngest admiral in Krillian history. At only 32 cycles, he had led successful campaigns against the Theros Rebellion and the Venture Coalition. His tactics were studied in military academies. His name was spoken with reverence by soldiers and fear by enemies. Vorn stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Silver Talon, watching stars drift past the viewing ports. His scales, deep blue with silver markings that indicated his rank, caught the light from the navigation displays. Around him, his crew worked in efficient silence, monitoring systems and plotting courses. They were 3 days into a patrol mission along the Outer Rim, far from the core worlds where glory was won. "Admiral," called his sensor officer, a young Krillian named Thex, "we're detecting unusual signals from Sector 790 Alpha." Vorn's eyes narrowed with interest. "What kind of signals?" "Electromagnetic patterns consistent with industrial activity. It appears to be a mining operation." Thex paused, studying his screen more closely. "Sir, the signature matches human technology." The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned to look at Vorn. The word human carried weight in Krillian military circles, though most younger soldiers didn't understand why. Vorn's second in command, Commander Riss, stepped forward. She was older, a veteran of wars Vorn had only read about. Her voice carried caution. "Admiral, if those are human operations, we should report to command and move on. Protocol dictates—" "I know the protocol, Commander," Vorn interrupted. "The ancient directive. Never engage humanity. Never provoke them. Never even approach their territory without explicit permission from the High Council." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Tell me, Riss, do you actually believe those old stories?" Riss didn't smile back. "Admiral, those protocols exist for a reason. They were written by admirals who lived in a different time," Vorn said, "when the Dominion was young and afraid of shadows. We're stronger now. We have conquered species far more advanced than humans ever were." He turned to Thex. "Show me what we're looking at." The main display lit up with tactical data. A small asteroid cluster appeared, and within it, clear signs of habitation, mining equipment, living quarters, communications arrays, and what appeared to be a small defensive grid. Nothing impressive, nothing that would challenge even a single Krillian destroyer. "Population estimate?" Vorn asked. "Approximately 200 individuals, mostly civilian miners, with a small security force. No military vessels detected in the system." Vorn studied the data with growing satisfaction. Here was an opportunity. For generations, Krillian commanders had whispered about humans with an almost superstitious dread. They spoke of ancient warnings, of battles that should have been won but weren't, of fleets that vanished without explanation. But no one could provide evidence. No one could explain why humanity, a species that controlled fewer than a dozen systems, should be treated with such caution. "It's a mining colony," Vorn said quietly, "barely defended, isolated. They're outside the boundaries of their own territory, which means they're operating in unclaimed space. Fair game by any interpretation of galactic law." "Admiral," Riss said, her voice harder now, "the directive isn't about law. It's about survival. Every admiral who has ignored it has what?" Vorn challenged. "Disappeared? Died mysteriously? Those are stories, Commander. Legends told to keep us cautious. But I didn't become the youngest admiral in Krillian history by being cautious. He turned to his tactical officer. How long would it take to destroy that facility? The officer hesitated, glancing at Riss before answering. With our current firepower, less than 10 minutes, sir. Their defensive grid wouldn't last against our plasma batteries. Vorn nodded slowly. His mind was already made up. He could return to the core worlds with proof that the human threat was nothing but mythology. His name would be remembered not just as a great tactician, but as the admiral who freed the Dominion from centuries of unnecessary fear. Admiral, please, Riss said quietly, at least contact the High Council. Request permission to investigate. Give them a chance to tell me to run away? Vorn's voice was sharp. To prove that we're still afraid of ghosts? He shook his head. No, Commander. This ends now. We're going to do what should have been done generations ago. He raised his voice so the entire bridge could hear. All ships, battle formation, target the mining facility, full assault pattern. I want that colony reduced to debris. No one moved. Every officer on the bridge stared at him with expressions ranging from shock to horror. Even the youngest crew members knew the directive. It was written into their training, carved into monuments, repeated in every military ceremony. Never attack humanity. Did I stutter? Vorn's voice cracked like a whip. Execute my orders now. Slowly, reluctantly, the crew began to comply. Riss opened her mouth to protest again, but Vorn silenced her with a glare. The Silver Talon and her escort ships, 12 destroyers in total, turned toward the asteroid field. Their plasma batteries charged, glowing with deadly blue light. On the mining colony, alarms began to sound. The human workers looked up at their sensors in confusion, then growing alarm. They sent out distress signals, emergency broadcasts, desperate pleas for help. But they were too far from any human military outpost. Help wouldn't arrive in time. Targets locked, reported the tactical officer, his voice hollow. Fire, Vorn commanded. The space around the asteroid field lit up with blue plasma fire. The Krillian warships unleashed their full arsenal. The mining colony's shields lasted exactly 3 seconds before collapsing. Explosions rippled across the facility. Living quarters vaporized. Mining equipment melted into slag. The communications array sent out one final, cut-off transmission before it too was destroyed. In less than 8 minutes, nothing remained but drifting debris and fading thermal signatures. 200 human lives ended in an instant. The colony that had taken years to build was erased as if it had never existed. Vorn's crew stood in stunned silence. Some looked sick. Others stared at their displays with blank expressions, trying to process what they'd just done. Log the engagement, Vorn said calmly. Record that we encountered an unauthorized mining operation in unclaimed space and removed it per standard protocol. No mention of human identity unless directly asked. Admiral, Thex said quietly, his voice shaking. Sir, we're picking up something strange. What now? The colony's last transmission. It wasn't a distress call. Thex played the audio. A human voice, calm despite the chaos, spoke in clear galactic standard. Message sent. Coordinates confirmed. They will know. The bridge fell silent again. Those 3 words, they will know, seemed to hang in the air like a curse. It means nothing, Vorn said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. A desperate threat from dying miners. Set course for home. We'll report this engagement to the Council, ourselves, on our terms. The fleet turned away from the debris field and began the journey back to Krillian space. They traveled for 3 days without incident. The crew tried to return to their normal routines, but something had changed. Conversations were quieter. Officers checked their sensors more frequently. Even Vorn found himself staring at the star charts, wondering. On the 4th day, the first ship vanished. It was the destroyer Crimson Edge, traveling at the rear of the formation. One moment it was there on sensors, reporting normal status. The next moment, it simply wasn't. No explosion, no distress signal, no debris field, just gone. Sensor malfunction, Vorn declared, though his scales had darkened with stress. Check all systems. They checked. Everything was functioning perfectly. The Crimson Edge was simply gone, as if it had been erased from existence. 6 hours later, a second destroyer disappeared, then a third. Each time, there was no warning, no sign of attack. The ships just ceased to exist. Panic began to spread through the fleet. Crews reported strange sensor readings, ghost contacts that appeared and vanished. Some claimed to see dark shapes moving past their viewports, too fast to identify. Others swore they heard sounds through the hull. The Silent Hunters. The darkness lasted only seconds, but to Admiral Vorn, it felt like an eternity. When the emergency lights flickered back to life, bathing the bridge in red, he saw his crew frozen at their stations. Every face showed the same expression, pure terror. "Damage report," Vorn commanded, fighting to keep his voice steady. Theoc's hands shook as he worked his console. "All systems functioning normally, Admiral. Power was never actually cut. The lights just turned off on their own." "That's impossible," the engineering officer said. "Our systems are isolated. Nothing external can—" "They did it anyway," Riss interrupted quietly. She stood at the viewport, staring out into the void. "They wanted us to know they're here. They wanted us to understand that our shields, our weapons, our technology means nothing to them." Vorn joined her at the window. Space looked empty, just stars and distant nebulae. But he knew better now. Somewhere out there, invisible to his sensors, human ships were watching, waiting, hunting. "Full sensor sweep," he ordered. "Maximum range. I want to know what we're facing." The crew obeyed, but their movements were mechanical, hopeless. They already knew what the sensors would show. Nothing. The scans came back clear. Empty space in all directions. No ships, no energy signatures, no trace of anything that could threaten them. Yet another destroyer vanished while they watched. The Stellar Guardian simply blinked out of existence on the tactical display. Vorn stared at the spot where it had been, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were seeing. 8 ships lost, Theox reported, his voice breaking. "Out of 13. Admiral, we need to—" An alarm cut him off. This time, the sensors did detect something. Multiple contacts, appearing all around the fleet. Dozens of them, moving at speeds that should have been impossible. They flickered in and out of detection range, sometimes visible, sometimes not, as if they existed in multiple places at once. "Evasive maneuvers," Vorn shouted. "All ships, scatter formation. Weapons free." The remaining Krillian vessels tried to break away, firing wildly into space. Blue plasma bolts lit up the darkness, hitting nothing. The human contacts moved around them like shadows, never staying in one place long enough to target. Then the communications array crackled to life. A voice, human, female, calm as ice. She spoke in perfect Krillian, without accent or hesitation. "Krillian vessels, this is Commander Elena Reyes of the Tracker Corps. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning." Vorn's scales flushed with anger. "We are the Krillian Dominion. We do not surrender to anyone, especially not to primitive." His words died as something appeared on the main view screen. A ship. Finally visible. It hung in space directly ahead of them, so close they should have detected it long ago. But it had been there all along, invisible, waiting. The vessel was unlike anything Vorn had ever seen. It wasn't large, perhaps half the size of his flagship, but its design was terrifying in its simplicity. Matte black hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible weapons, no markings, except one symbol painted in dark red. The same targeting reticle and broken chain they'd seen on their screens. "That's impossible," the engineering officer whispered. "Our sensors are scanning it right now, and they're still reading empty space. That ship shouldn't exist." More ships appeared. One by one, they materialized around the Krillian fleet like ghosts becoming solid. 10 of them. 20. 30. Each one identical, each one radiating quiet menace. The Krillians were surrounded. Commander Reyes spoke again. "Krillian vessels, I am Admiral Vorn Kellar. You attacked Mining Outpost 773. You killed 214 human civilians, including 42 children. Under the Terran Protection Act, you are now subject to immediate pursuit and capture. Surrender or be destroyed." Vorn's mind raced. Children. He had known there were children on that colony. The intelligence report had said minors, not families. But it didn't matter now. He'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "We had no way of knowing." He started. "You had one way," Riss interrupted quietly. "You could have followed the directive that has protected your species for 3 centuries. You could have stayed away from us." Riss stepped forward. "Commander Reyes, I am Executive Officer Riss Morna. Our government will. Your government will answer for this in time. But first, Admiral Vorn Kellar will face judgment. Power down your weapons, now." Vorn felt his world collapsing around him. Everything he'd built, his reputation, his career, his place in history, all of it crumbling. He'd been so certain the human threat was a myth, so confident in his superiority. How could he have been so wrong? "Admiral," Theox called out, "more contacts, behind us." The tactical display lit up with red markers, dozens more ships appearing from nowhere. These were larger, heavier vessels, warships. The small hunter craft had been just the advance force. A new voice joined the communication channel. Older, male, carrying the weight of authority. "This is Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. Commander Reyes, status. Target surrounded, Captain. Awaiting their surrender." "Understood. Krillian vessels, I want you to know something. The Tracker Corps finds you. We always find you. But what happens next depends entirely on your cooperation. Choose wisely." Vorn looked around his bridge. His crew stared back at him, waiting for orders. But what orders could he give? Fight? Against an enemy they couldn't see? Couldn't target? Couldn't even understand? Run? To where? The humans had tracked them across light years of space, through Krillian territory, without ever being detected. "We will surrender," Riss said suddenly. She turned to Vorn. "Admiral, with respect, you've made enough decisions for one lifetime. Stand down." For a moment, Vorn considered refusing, considered going down fighting, ending this nightmare with one final futile gesture. But as he looked at his crew, at the young officers who trusted him, who'd followed his orders even when they knew those orders were wrong, he couldn't do it. He'd already caused enough death. "Power down weapons," he said quietly. "Drop shields. Prepare for boarding." The Krillian ships obeyed. Their plasma batteries went dark. Their defensive fields collapsed. They hung in space, helpless and exposed, surrounded by shadows that had once seemed like myths. The human ships moved closer. He could see them clearly now, their hulls reflecting the distant stars. As they approached, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Each ship bore tallies, small marks painted on their hulls. Hundreds of them. Thousands. "What are those?" Theox whispered. "Kills," Riss answered. "Each mark represents a ship they've destroyed. How long have they been doing this?" The answer came from Commander Reyes, her voice softer now, almost sad. "Since the burning of Terra Station, 312 years ago, when 7 alien species decided to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. They destroyed our first colony outside the Sol system. 17,000 people died, men, women, children. The galaxy thought humanity would retreat.
would hide, would disappear. Instead, we created the trackers. We swore an oath. Attack one human and we hunt you to the end of space. Kill human civilians, and there is no mercy, no escape, no forgiveness. For over 3 centuries, we've kept that oath. Every species that violated it learned the same lesson you're learning now. Vorn felt something break inside him. The old admirals knew, he whispered. That's why they wrote the directive. They met your trackers before. Many times, and every time they were wise enough to remember the lesson. But wisdom fades with generations. Pride grows. And so every few decades, someone like you appears. Someone who thinks they're special. Someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them. Boarding craft launched from the human warships. Small angular vessels that attached themselves to Krillian hulls like parasites. Human soldiers entered the bridge. They wore black armor that seemed to drink in the light. Helmets with featureless faceplates that reflected the Krillians' terrified expressions back at them. They moved with perfect precision, weapons ready, but not threatening. Professional, efficient, terrifying. One of them stepped forward, removing their helmet. A woman, dark-skinned, with close-cropped hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Commander Elena Reyes in person. She looked at Vorn for a long moment, studying him like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. Then she spoke, her voice carrying to every corner of the bridge. Admiral Vorn Kellar, you are under arrest for crimes against humanity. You will be transported to a neutral tribunal where you will face judgment. Your crew will be detained and questioned. Those who objected to your actions will be released.
The price of arrogance. The holding cell was small but not uncomfortable. Vorn sat on a simple bench, staring at smooth metal walls that seemed to absorb sound. No windows, no displays, nothing but silence and his own thoughts. He'd been there for what felt like days, though without any way to measure time, he couldn't be certain. The door opened with a soft hiss. Commander Elena Reyes entered, carrying a datapad. She looked tired, Vorn noticed, not physically exhausted, but worn down by something deeper. The wariness of someone who'd seen the same tragedy repeated too many times. "Admiral Keller," she said, settling into a chair across from him, "we need to talk." "About my trial?" Vorn asked, bitterly. "About history." She activated the datapad, and holographic images appeared in the air between them. "Tell me, what do you know about the burning of Terra Station?" Vorn shook his head. "Only what you mentioned before. A human colony was destroyed 3 centuries ago." "Not just destroyed," Reyes corrected. She expanded the hologram, showing a massive space station orbiting a blue-green world. It was beautiful, a triumph of engineering and hope. The image shifted, showing alien ships approaching. Vorn recognized some of the designs. Tharos, Venture, Korlath, even ancient Krillian vessels. 7 species came to Terra Station, Reyes continued, her voice flat. They said they wanted to welcome us, to establish diplomatic relations. We believed them. We opened our doors, shared our technology, our culture, our dreams. The image shifted, showing what came next. Fire, explosions, bodies floating in space. They waited until our defenses were down. Then they attacked. 17,000 people died in 6 hours. Men, women, children, scientists, artists, teachers, all gone. Vorn watched the destruction play out, feeling sick. Why? What did humanity do to provoke such hatred? Nothing, Rhea said simply. We were just new, weak, unknown. The 7 species had formed a pact, you see. They decided that the galaxy was already crowded enough. Any new spacefaring race would be eliminated before they could become competition. Terra Station was a test. They wanted to see if humanity would fight back or disappear. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. But they made one mistake. They didn't destroy everything. 3 ships escaped. One of them carried a young woman named Sarah Chen, the captain's ancestor. She watched her family die, her friends, her children, and she swore an oath that day. Never again. Never, ever again. The hologram changed, showing a different kind of ship. Sleek, dark, purposeful. Sarah Chen returned to Earth and convinced the government to create something new. Not a navy for conquest, not an army for expansion, but hunters, protectors. The Tracker Corps was born from that promise. We would never seek war, but we would never allow another Terra station. Rhea stood and began pacing, her movements controlled but restless. For 50 years, we hunted the 7 species responsible. Not their civilians, not their innocents, but their leaders, their military commanders, anyone who'd participated in the massacre. We didn't announce ourselves, didn't make demands. We just appeared, took them, brought them to trial, and executed the sentences. How many? Vorn asked quietly. 4,637 individuals. Each one documented, each one tried fairly, each one guilty beyond doubt. And when it was done, we sent a message to every known species in the galaxy. One simple rule: leave humanity alone, and we leave you alone. Attack us, and we will find you, no matter how long it takes, no matter where you hide. She turned back to him. Your people received that message, Admiral. Your ancestors were wise enough to write it into law. The directive you ignored wasn't arbitrary. It was a peace treaty written in the blood of those who learned too late what happens when you hunt humans. Vorn felt the weight of 3 centuries pressing down on him. You've been doing this for 300 years, just waiting for someone to attack? Not waiting, Reyes corrected. Living, building, growing. We have dozens of colonies now, millions of citizens spread across the stars. We trade, we explore, we create art and science and culture. The trackers are just one small part of humanity. Most humans never see us, never think about us. They live their lives in peace because we do the dark work in the shadows. She sat back down, her expression softening slightly. That's what you and others like you never understand. We don't want to be warriors. We don't want to hunt or kill or inspire fear. We just want to exist. But the galaxy keeps testing us. Every few decades, some ambitious leader decides the old warnings are myths. Some proud military officer thinks they can prove humanity is weak. And every time, we have to remind everyone why the warnings exist. How many times? Vorn asked. You're the 43rd. 43 times in 300 years, someone has attacked a human target. 43 times we've responded, and 43 times the aggressor's species has updated their records and strengthened their version of the directive. She looked at him with something approaching sympathy. You're not unique, Admiral. You're just the latest in a long line of people who thought they knew better. The door opened again. 2 guards entered, followed by an older human man in formal uniform. Captain Marcus Chen. Vorn recognized him from the voice he'd heard before. The family resemblance to Sarah Chen was clear in his features. Commander Elena? Chen said with a nod. Is he ready? Ready for what? Vorn asked. Your choice, Chen replied. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing 2 paths. You have 2 options, Admiral. Option 1 is trial. You'll be taken to a neutral station, judged by a panel of representatives from various species, including your own. The evidence is overwhelming. You'll be found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment on a remote facility. You'll live, but you'll never see your home again. He highlighted the second path. Option 2 is messenger. We return you to the Krillian Dominion with full documentation of what happened here. You tell your people the truth. You testify before your High Council. You make them understand that the directive must never be ignored again. You spend the rest of your life ensuring that what you did can never be repeated. Vorn stared at the 2 paths, understanding the weight of the decision. If I choose to be a messenger, What happens to my crew? To the others who followed my orders? Those who objected are already being returned to your government. Those who enthusiastically supported the attack will face trial. Those who simply followed orders will be released with documentation of their limited involvement. We're not interested in punishing everyone. We're interested in justice. And if I refuse both options, Chen's expression hardened. Then you've chosen option 3. The trackers don't take prisoners who won't cooperate. You'll be executed here, now, and your body returned to your people as a warning. But I'll be honest with you, Admiral. That's the coward's way out. If you have any honor left, you'll face what you've done and help prevent it from happening again. Vorn looked between them. These humans who should have been his victims, but had instead become his judges. He thought about the 214 people he'd killed, the 22 children who'd never grow up, the families destroyed, all for his pride, all to prove a point that didn't need proving. "I'll be your messenger," he said quietly. "I'll tell them everything." Reyes nodded, something like respect flickering in her eyes. "Good. You'll leave within an hour. We've prepared complete documentation, including sensor logs, communication records, and testimony from your own crew. Your High Council will have everything they need to understand what happened and why." "One question," Vorn asked. "Why do you show me all this? Why explain your history, your methods? Wouldn't fear work better if we didn't understand you?" Chen smiled, but there was no humor in it. Fear based on ignorance breeds more attempts. Fear based on understanding breeds wisdom. We want the galaxy to know exactly what we are and what we're capable of. We want every ambitious officer, every proud admiral, every arrogant leader to understand the full consequences of their actions before they act. Maybe someday, that will be enough. Maybe someday we can retire the trackers and just live in peace. But not today, Vorn said. "Not today," Chen agreed. They transported Vorn to a small, fast courier ship. It was automated, requiring no crew, programmed with a direct course to Krillian space. The cargo hold contained dozens of data cores, all containing evidence of what had happened, testimony, records, even images of the destroyed colony and the faces of those who had died. As the ship prepared to launch, Reyes appeared one final time on the communication screen. "Admiral Keller, one last..."